That is very good. The swing works, the oracle again.
And the Yorker bowled in. That is out. Great theatre, magnificent drama.
First match of the season, eh, Howard?
First match of the season, Martin.
King Willow's on his throne and all's right with the world.
Gods and Flannelled Fools. It's from a poem about cricket.
Oh, very apt. How does it go on, my old Howard?
That's the only line I know.
Oh, but never mind, you certainly made the point.
Hello, and welcome to Gods and Flannelled Fools, Episode 12, Botham's Ashes. This is the series in which I walk through a history of English Test match cricket, focusing on key series, matches, players and teams of particular interest, basically exploring the myths and legends of the game that collectively have led to how we view Test match cricket today. Now, if you haven't already listened, my pilot episode, A Brief History of the Game, up to the very first two Test matches in 1877, is available, as well as the first 11 episodes, during which I cover a variety of series, themes, individuals, ranging from the early legends of the English game prior to the two World Wars, through to the Bodyline series, timeless tests, and then on to post-war series of the 50s and 60s, and some fiercely contested Ashes series in the 70s. So very much worth checking those out on my channel. There's a Twitter profile for the series, at GFFpod, and I'll also make some notes in support of this on the blog, which is available at godsandflannelledfools.blogspot.com. And in episode 11, we looked at the volatile period of the mid-70s, which comprised of several series in which England were left battered and bruised against an onslaught of pace bowling, firstly against Australia with Lillian Thompson, and then against the rejuvenated West Indies with, led by Robertson Holding. As the decade drew to a close, the advent of Kerry Packer's World Series cricket took a number of high-profile players away from the Test arena, whilst a number of other names slipped into retirement. And the leadership of the England team in this period passed to the captaincy of Mike Brearley, and once more the team went through sort of an evolution. The likes of Derek Underwood, Alan Knott and Bob Willis, they've appeared at length in previous episodes, and they were added to from an experience perspective by Jeff Boycott, who finally returned to international cricket in the Ashes series of 1977 after, as I've discussed before, a self-imposed hiatus of several years. And there was also an influx of new talent, both in terms of the batting and the bowling department. Now, of these, Graham Gooch, he made his debut in 1975, famously making a pair against Australia and subsequently being dropped. But he was reselected 3 years later and began to demonstrate his, really prolific county form for Essex, being awarded Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1980 eventually, following some strong performances against the West Indies, including his first Test century. And a man who enjoyed a far more assured start to his Test career was David Gower, a stylish young batsman, left-handed batsman who made his name with Leicestershire, and then on debut for England against Pakistan hit his very first ball in Test cricket for 4, scoring 2 half-centuries in that same series and following that up with a maiden 100 against Australia at Perth the following winter. Like Gooch, he would be a mainstay of the England side over the course of the next decade. Of all the names to emerge for England in the latter half of the 1970s, however, it's that of a certain Ian Botham that stands head and shoulders above the others when it came to instant fame, talent and sheer personality.
That is very good. The swing works, the Oracle again.
Ian Terence Botham was born in 1955, the son of an airman and a nurse who moved to Yeovil when he was 3. Both his parents had played cricket, and as a child he developed an eagerness for the game, watching the local boys play and famously informing his mother the grip required in order to bowl a daisy cutter at just the age of 4. At Milford Junior School, he excelled at both cricket and football, often turning out for teams 2 years his senior, and would also play the odd game for his father's team, Westland Sports Club, where they were short on players. By the age of 12, he was already playing matches for Yeovil's second 11, and a year later made his debut for the Somerset under-15 side. At the age of 15, Botham was offered a contract with Somerset County Cricket Club, and also at the same time a professional football apprenticeship with Crystal Palace. And after a discussion with his father, he chose the cricketing route, though throughout the late 70s and early 80s, he would continue to turn out occasionally for both Yeovil Town and Scunthorpe United, making a total of 11 appearances as a centre-half in the Football League. He left school at 16, joining the ground staff at Lord's to make ends meet before receiving the first proper contract with Somerset the following year. He made his senior debut for Somerset in 1973 in a limited overs match, and became a regular in the side the following year, a season in which Viv Richards, the explosive young West Indian batsman from Antigua, joined the club under the captaincy of Brian Close. And these two men would become influential to Botham. That summer, Somerset played a Benson and Hedges Cup quarter-final against Hampshire at Taunton, and Botham came to the crease at 113 for 8, chasing an unlikely target of 183 with only 2 wickets left. The West Indian fast bowler Andy Roberts delivered a brutal bouncer which struck him in the mouth, splitting open his skin and knocking out 4 teeth. But against medical advice, Botham spat the teeth out and refused to leave the field. Despite the heavy bleeding, he struck 2 sixes in his match-winning score of 45 not out, and the legend of Beefy Botham was born. Strong performances for his county in 1974 and 1975 led to his call-up for England in a couple of limited-over internationals against the West Indies in 1976. And though he didn't register any notable performances, it was felt that he was one to watch for the following season. During the winter of 1976-7, he played district cricket in Melbourne, and while doing so was involved in a famous altercation with Ian Chappell in a bar, which resulted in a physical confrontation and a feud that has lasted to the present day. Ian Botham made his Test debut at Trent Bridge on the 28th of July 1977 in the 3rd Test against Australia, though this match was overshadowed by the return from the self-imposed Test exile of Geoffrey Boycott. He made an immediate impact with 5 for 74 in the Australian first innings and took another 5 for in the following match at Headingley. That was the match in which Boycott registered his 100th first-class century. Injury then ruled him out of the rest of the 1977 cricket season, though he was named as one of the Wisden Cricketers of the Year. It was whilst going to one of his hospital appointments for his foot injury that he took a wrong turn and ended up on a children's ward where he learned that some of the children were dying of leukemia. This incident sparked his charitable crusade on behalf of leukemia research. Botham returned from injury against New Zealand in 1978, scoring 100 and taking a 5-fer in the second Test, and also performing well in the third, cementing his place as the all-rounder in the side. Although the end of the decade was overshadowed by the influence of Kerry Packer with his World Series cricket, Botham grew from strength to strength, consistently performing with bat and ball, capable of match-winning performances as a hard-hitting batsman and strike bowler, which is not always a common combination. At this stage in his career, his bowling was genuinely fast, with pace generated from his large frame and efficient action, and he was able to deliver late swing both ways. Both home and away, against most sides, he kept racking up the runs and wickets, and the records began to tumble. He registered 100 test wickets in only his 19th test, and only 4 bowlers had achieved this quicker in the whole of history. And after 25 tests, his batting average of 40.5 was more than twice that of his bowling average, which was only 18.5. And having raced to the double of 200 wickets and 2,000 runs, England fans at this point in time could be forgiven for the hyperbole regarding this new cricketing superstar. In 1980, the English team toured India to play a one-off test match, the so-called Golden Jubilee Test, because it marked the 50th anniversary of India's entry into world cricket. It was far from a triumphant match for the Indians, who were comprehensively dismantled by Ian Botham, whose star reached its peak as he became the first cricketer to get the double of 10 wickets and 100 in the same match. He took 6 for 58 in India's first innings of 242 and then smashed 114 from 144 balls in their reply of 296. He then took 7 for 48 in their second innings, India being bowled out for 149 on the fourth day, giving him total match figures of 13 for 106. Boycott and Gooch knocked off the required runs to win by 10 wickets within 4 days. This spectacular performance, surpassing everything that had gone before it, catapulted him to international cricketing stardom. But the timing was perhaps not the greatest for him or for English cricket. After the Test match in Bombay, Mike Brearley announced his retirement from Test match cricket, and Botham was appointed to replace him as captain for the forthcoming home series against the West Indies, who since the last series in 1976 had gone from strength to strength to become the world's leading test team. As luck, or perhaps lack of it, would have it, back-to-back series against the West Indies had been scheduled, meaning that 9 of his first 10 matches would be against a side that were in the process of becoming recognised as one of the greatest test teams of all time. 1980 was a wet summer. And though the West Indies only won the series 1-0, this was largely thanks to the weather, which saved England on a number of occasions. Botham had a poor series as a bowler, averaging over 30 and only passing 50 with the bat once. The tour to the Caribbean that followed was a controversial one. After England were crushed by an innings in the first test in Trinidad, the second test was cancelled owing to the Guyanese government revoking the visa of seam bowler Robin Jackman because of his playing and coaching links to South Africa, who obviously at the time was still banned from international sport owing to apartheid. Jackman had only been flown out as injury cover for Bob Willis. And in the third test at Barbados, Michael Holding was on fire, bowling what has come to be known by many as one of the greatest by a fast bowler in history, dismissing Jeff Boycott for a 6-ball duck, establishing a healthy first innings lead. And that same night, the assistant tour manager and former batsman Ken Barrington suffered a fatal heart attack, the tour going from bad to worse. It's worth noting that Barrington had been instrumental in Botham's appointment as captain, and the two had a really strong bond. As well as losing the Test series 2-0, England also lost the short one-day series that followed by the same margin. And by the time they returned home, the explosive, heroic, seemingly immortal presence of Ian Botham had faded, with his bowling having lost its zip and rhythm, his batting having failed, and his leadership fallen over, albeit, it must be said, at the hands of an immensely powerful cricketing team. This remarkable run of poor results, assisted no doubt by bad luck, difficult politics and poor weather, meant that the English cricket team were not in a good state heading into the summer of 1981, where a 6-match home Ashes series would ordinarily have given cause for excitement. The state of the nation at that point was not especially optimistic, with the economic difficulties being experienced in certain areas and at times riots taking place in places such as Liverpool and Brixton, as well as the ongoing troubles in Northern Ireland and the threat of the IRA. Unfortunately, it seemed that cricket was not likely to provide a respite from the gloom, because with Botham still captain, England fell at the first hurdle. The first test began at Trent Bridge on the 18th of June 1981 and ended in a victory to Australia in a relatively low-scoring, tight game. Just over a week later, the two teams met again at Lord's, and although the match ended in a draw, Botham's form was completely shot to pieces, and he ended up being dismissed for a pair. As he trudged off towards the pavilion for the second time, his facial expression was one of complete dejection, and the reaction he received from the scattering of MCC members and the bench seating was of total indifference.
And that's close. He's got him. Lawson has dismissed the England captain. And things could hardly be going worse for Ian Botham at the moment.
And I'm afraid that's just not good enough. Oh, the fates follow you. Prepare for the England captain.
It was a bit of a shambles, really. England struggle. I mean, it's a draw, but it's a messy draw.
LBW.
The main recollection most people will have of that was that he scored naught in both innings and received a very bad reception when he returned to the pavilion after his second duck.
The ground was silent, and I just thought, this is just horrendous.
The spectators showed their approval by absolutely not clapping, not even looking up when he left. And we knew then that probably he had to go as captain.
This picture was taken the second test at Lord's when he just made that duck in the second innings. And you can see he's holding his bat to the ground. He's obviously pretty unhappy with life.
Nobody even put their hands together for the England captain on his way back.
Returns to silence.
That icy silence that he received was as symbolic of the contempt they felt for him as a man and their distrust of him. And it was a horrible moment, absolutely horrible.
The members are really trying to avoid his gaze. There's this guy here, he's filling his diary or his scorecard, who knows. This one here is all three are making it absolutely clear they're not looking at both of them.
That really rankled with Ian, and I know for a fact that he, I don't think he ever acknowledged the Lord's members after that in any shape or form. They're a tough bunch, that lot.
According to Wisden, Botham resigned following the second test a minute before he was sacked, and with 4 tests still to be played, the selectors turned to Mike Brearley, who came out of retirement to take up the captaincy once more. The third Ashes test began at Headingley on the 16th of July 1981, and despite Brearley's comeback, Australia picked up where they'd left off, posting 401 for 9 declared, though it was noted that Botham took 6 wickets in a much improved performance with the ball. In response, England's innings was a disaster, being dismissed for only 174 with Botham's first half-century since having been awarded the captaincy 13 tests previously. Having been forced to follow on, they reached the end of the third day on 6 for 1, with Gooch falling to Lilly for a duck, prompting the electronic scoreboard to flash up with the Ladbrokes' latest odds of 500 to 1 for an English victory. As the Sunday was a rest day, the players could relax, and it was customary to share a few beers in the knowledge that they had a day off. Ian Botham invited all the players on both sides, including their families, to his family village of Epworth, just outside Scunthorpe. And despite the English players being naturally quite morose at the end of the day, they loosened up after a few drinks and began to enjoy themselves as the barbecue was lit and the party got into full swing. And many of them awoke with a headache the following day, and the locals remember it passing as a quiet, typically sleepy English summer Sunday. Little did they realise what the following day had in store for them. Most of the players assumed that the test would be over well before the end of play and therefore checked out of their hotels. When the fourth day did start, this seemed likely, as England continued to struggle, falling by mid-afternoon to 135 for 7, still a significant number of runs behind making Australia bat again. Botham arrived at the crease at 2:15, 35 minutes into the afternoon session, and he took a while to get going. With half an hour to go before tea, however, the mood suddenly oddly lightened. The weather brightened up, the Australians relaxed, confident of a quick victory, and the crowd at Headingley loosened up, which is typically the case for a Yorkshire crowd. Joined by Graham Dilley at the crease, they decided to have a go at the bowling with nothing to lose. And initially this came from Dilley himself, who made 22 out of the first 27 runs of the partnership. But when play resumed after tea, Botham decided to launch a premeditated assault upon the Australian pace attack. He reached his 50 from 57 balls, hitting the ball so hard it looked as if he would dislocate his shoulders with every blow. Many of his boundaries were edges over the top or alternatively agricultural slogs down the ground, but it all came off, crucially, joined in no small part by some lusty blows from Dilley. By the time Botham reached the 90s, both Alderman and Lilly were exhausted from their continual stints, and the pressure suddenly began to revert back onto the Australians.
The way he plays, probably doesn't take you long to come back saying, well, let's watch this anyway.
Oh, beautiful stroke, beautiful stroke.
I actually sat with the Australian wives, and Jane Border said, oh, Both's getting a few runs. I said, oh, thank goodness for that. I said, I'm sorry, girls, but thank goodness for that. You know, we had a laugh about it. More runs came about. You think, oh, hang on a minute.
Safely over the top of Hughes' head.
He started to bat more and more freely, and it became an extraordinary sight.
Oh, now it's 4 needed.
It was a hitter's innings. I mean, sometimes it was pure village green.
Absolute thoroughbred stroke.
You know, once I got to 50, I thought we can make them bat. Just don't lose by an innings.
He looked imperious, all the cliches. He looked in charge. He looked as if he was having fun.
There was a few thick edges, there were a few thin edges, but they went in the right areas, and I got away with it.
And there is the 100 partnership.
And then I went and joined Mum and Dad and Ian's mum and dad. The atmosphere there, absolutely unbelievable.
They weren't looking for that, let alone chasing it. It's gone straight into the confectionery stall and out again.
We suddenly thought, well, at least we're not going to be humiliated. At least Australia's jolly well going to have to bat again. That's something. We were used to them winning by an innings.
Safely away for 4. That's a splendid 100.
The way he scored the runs and the belligerent manner in which he completely crucified the Australian attack was one of the great things to behold. I'll never forget it.
Botham's 103 came off 87 balls and took just over 2.5 hours. The only other man to score a century and take 5 wickets in an Ashes test was Jack Gregory in 1921. After Graham Dilley fell to Alderman, Chris Old joined Botham and played a more measured innings to allow Botham to continue his attack. The crowd, having initially been in festival mode, quickly realised, firstly, that they might avoid an innings defeat, and then when the lead actually passed 50, that there might be a target in mind of what might be required to make a game of it. When Old was bowled by Lawson for 29, that lead was 92, and it was at this point that Botham began to rein things in, realising there was an opportunity to set something over 100 if he batted sensibly with Bob Willis for the final wicket. Finally, at the close of the 4th day, England were 351 for 9, with a lead of 124. It barely seemed imaginable, and as such, Botham made straight for the dressing room, shunned all media requests, and spent some time sitting with a cigar trying to make sense of it all. There was only time for 4 more runs at the start of the final day before Willis was out, setting Australia a victory target of 130. Most pundits were of the view that, despite the gremlins in the wicket and the comeback by England, this would still be a formality for the Australians, who would probably at most lose 3 or 4 wickets in the process. Just over an hour into the innings, Dyson and Chappell took the score past 50 for 1, almost halfway there, with Botham and Dilley bowling quite erratically. Old replaced Botham, and then Brearley switched their end, giving the angry and brooding Bob Willis the Kirkstall end and telling him to take advantage of going down the hill by coming in fast. Bob Willis, his career on the line and his eyes wild and focused and savage, did just that. And the rest is cricketing history.
And England on the brink of an absolutely sensational victory, which is going to go down as one of the most amazing Test victories of all time if it happens.
Oh, what a good catch. And Lilly has miscued it to mid-on. Gatting didn't sight it to start with. Couldn't pick it up in the background, then got it. And it needed a dive forward to take a great catch. 110 for 9. And the first one, Willis got up into Lilly's half, produced the wicket. Lilly out for 17, caught Gatting, bowled Willis. Bowled him, it's all over, and it is one of the most fantastic victories ever known in Test cricket history. Bob Willis, 8 wickets, a fabulous performance. England have won this match after one of the most astonishing fightbacks you could ever see.
Such was the drama of the last 2 days of the Test that when Bright and Lilly fought back, the Test again swung in the balance. In only 4 overs they added 35 and were only 20 runs away from victory, only for Willis to come steaming in again to remove Lilly thanks to a back-pedalling catch from Gatting. At 2:20, it was all over when, as you heard in the clip there, Willis's first ball of his 16th over, which was fast, straight and full, took Bright's middle stump out, sending the players into celebrations whilst running for the safety of the pavilion. An extraordinary Test victory. With the series locked at 1-1, the 4th Test match began in Birmingham a few days later, where the close tussle continued. In a low-scoring match in which no single player passed 50, England conceded a 69-run first innings deficit. And Australia batted last, needing only 151 to win. They comfortably reached 105 for 4, with a very easy victory in their grasp, when Mike Brearley gave the ball to Botham.
Hold him. 114 for 6. Rodney Marsh goes, trying to hit it away through mid-on, across the line. 114 for 6, and the crowd has gone noisily berserk. He's out, LBW. First ball, and Botham's on a hat-trick. Second attempt, and Bob Taylor grabbed it. Lilly is gone. It's 120 for 8.
Botham again to count. And he's bowled him, and that surely is going to be it. A joyous, triumphant Botham there. Arms aloft again, 121 for 9, and the man that they so much needed to see the back of, Martin Kent. Bowled by Botham in an inspired spell here. He goes for 10, 121 for 9, with only Terry Alderman to come. And who would believe it? Alderman facing. And that's it this time. He's made sure he's taken 5 wickets. He grabs a stump. And another memorable victory for England.
Finishing with figures of 5 for 11, with an amazing single spell of 5 wickets for 1 single run, Botham decimated Australia, who were bowled out for 121, giving England victory by 29 runs and a 2-1 lead in the series that could barely have been imaginable a couple of weeks previously. There was a short break to the 5th Test at Old Trafford, which began on the 13th of August 1981. England batted first and posted 231 in their first innings, with Lilly taking 4 wickets and Chris Tavares making a half-century. In reply, Australia were bowled out for 130, Bob Willis again impressing and allowing England to impose a grip on the game. When Botham walked to the wicket, they were in danger of drifting a little, but another amazing performance from England's all-rounder, in stark contrast with the docile Tavares at the other end, brought back the atmosphere of Headingley in what was considered an even finer innings of 118 off only 102 balls.
And they mustn't give him room outside the off stump. Dennis Lilly. In the air and 6. That was a good hit because he was beaten for pace with it, and he took his eye off it and still swung the bat and collected it over deep square leg. They're just not learning at all, the Australian bowlers. At Headingley, they gave Botham room to play his strokes. Here, they're doing it again, and he smashed them for a quick 50. And that drew all of it into the trap. The first one up to be driven down the ground. Now, that was just about the best shot Botham's played today. In the air for 6. He plays that shot very well. He doesn't bother looking at it. He just swats it away like as though you're smashing a fly. And away over extra cover. 3, 4 bounces and over the ropes. The ball might be over the ropes, but the Australians are right on them at the moment.
Down the wicket, big hit, glorious shot, all the way. Up go the arms, 6 more for Botham. Well, that one didn't. Lilly's there, it's cleared him over the ropes. What a magnificent way to go to a 6. What a superlative exhibition this has been. And the whole of Old Trafford rising to its feet to acclaim yet another memorable, magnificent performance from Ian Botham.
Setting Australia a mammoth target of over 500, England bowled them out for 402 with centuries from Border and Yallop, both in vain. England taking an unassailable 3-1 lead, meaning they would retain the urn regardless of what happened in the final test. The 6th test at the Oval was a slightly higher scoring draw, with Botham taking a 5-for in the first innings, but the drama had already taken place, and the series would conclude as a triumph for English cricket, and in particular for the legend that was Ian Botham. For all the amazing performances in the early part of his career, and then his subsequent and quite dramatic return to form following his unsuccessful stint as captain, Botham would struggle to reach those heights again. Although he continued to perform well for both Somerset and England, his runs and wickets did not come at the same rate or average as before, and a persistent back injury would over time lead to a restriction in movement and a loss of power, leading eventually to major surgery in 1988. Though he would go on to score 14 Test centuries, including a top score of 208 against India in 1982, the year after his famous Ashes series, 13 of these centuries would be registered before his 30th birthday in 1985. And similarly, 25 of his 27 5-wicket hauls would also come before this same point. There was perhaps one other reason for his somewhat inconsistent form as the decade progressed. While his record was certainly formidable against most sides, and especially Australia, when he had a point to prove, there was still an increasing gulf with the world's leading Test team. And this is something that will provide the focus for the next episode of Gods and Flannelled Fools. Until then, thank you for listening and subscribing. Bye for now.